We just simply don't care about brands that much. That said, we do care about some brands more than others. At certain moments, I think brands can be really important signifiers, but I do try to keep, I think, a clear head about the sort of limits of brand meaning in people's lives, lest I lose the plot entirely and then come to believe people should really devote all their, waking lives to thinking about checking accounts or beers. What feels interesting to me coincides with what you've just described, which is, to me, the most interesting brands are able to get people to do something they wouldn't have otherwise done before behaviorally. That small behavioral difference represents billions of dollars because it's the number of usage occasions explodes. And I found that very interesting to watch a company do that deliberately.
Sounds like episodes of Mad Men.
Yeah.
Thank you. Which I really, really did love. TV show, and I still watch it time to time.
My name's Justine Feron. I am the Chief Strategy Officer of HAVAS, which is a New York-based ad agency. And I help lead the agency, but I also lead a team of strategists who work on clients like JBL Speakers and Danone Yogurts and Asahi Beer and Cuervo Tequila and all kinds of really varied things. Before working at HAVAS, I used to work at agencies like Gray and Ogilvy and BBDO on clients like Modelo and Frank's Red Hot and Gillette and Dove and Snickers, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of those. I work as a professor in my spare time, so I teach a brand strategy course at Marist University, and I write, although less frequently lately because things fall off the list, but I've published essays in places like the New York Times and Slate and wrote a chapbook for Bottle Cap Press. And I have 2 kids who are 4 and 7, so they're busy. I'm busy too.
And a puppy.
And a puppy, Jojo. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Justine.
Nice to be here.
So before we start conversation, I think you and I have a number of conversations before this one. You said one thing that is fascinating, and that is, we all know that, but it's coming from somebody who's really does branding for a living. We don't care about brands. But somehow we do care for some. For others, we don't care at all. And if they go away, we'll never even notice.
Yeah. And this is a thing also that the company that I work for, HAVAS, has a study that measures brand meaning, and they do it every year. And it basically tells the same slightly depressing story every year, which is that 80% of brands could disappear and nobody would care, which is sort of anecdotally something that has always rung true for me long before I worked at HAVAS. And it's sort of a funny thing because I spend my life, my working life, trying to make brand meaning, but I do so with a certain amount of cynicism about my abilities, because also, I'm a human being, and I know that if I wake up at 4 a.m. in a cold sweat, it is never about a brand. It might be about my kids, it might be about my dog or my apartment or my husband or my job or my health, but it's never going to be a brand that moves me to that level of agitation or excitement or fear. We just simply don't care about brands that much. That said, we do care about some brands more than others. At certain moments, I think brands can be really important signifiers, but I do try to keep, I think, a clear head about the sort of limits of brand meaning in people's lives, lest I lose the plot entirely and then come to believe people should really devote all their, waking lives to thinking about checking accounts or beers.
So we are both agreed that there's a brand that we care, that we don't care, or that we care somehow or some ways. I do believe that brands that we really do care are those who make us do things that we haven't been able to do before. And I know that you have a couple of those moments in your career that actually is not about shifting just perception and positioning, but actually get people to do in behavior differently in small and large and small ways. So
yeah, I think of the many brands, part of the funny thing about working at an ad agency is that by virtue of making that life choice, you work on many, many brands simultaneously, and therefore over a career, amass a bunch of them. And there's a degree to which they all kind of blur together, except for ones where you feel like you did something, I don't know, particularly interesting. And I think what feels interesting to me coincides with what you've just described, which is, to me, the most interesting brands are able to get people to do something they wouldn't have otherwise done before behaviorally. One of the first ones I worked on that I think really like colored how I think about these things is Snickers has had a campaign called You're Not You When You're Hungry for like forever, for like 20 years. And it's this sort of genius campaign. I say that not having invented the campaign. I was like a child in like my first job when I was a junior person working on this account. But I got to watch people who were, considerably more senior and smart kind of work their magic with it. And I think Snickers competes in this very crowded category of candy bars, and there are like hundreds of them, all kind of some combination of the same like 10 ingredients. And basically, why do you buy a candy bar? They're delicious. It's not really like a deeply functional choice. If you were really hungry for real, you would buy a granola bar or a protein bar or a yogurt or a full meal for that matter. But I think what Snickers recognized is that there was some daylight between, on one hand, things you just choose purely for taste with no expectation that they'll fill you up, candy, and like things that tide you over because you are legitimately kind of hungry. Nuts would be a good example. But there is a space for something in between that is as delicious as like eating a Swedish fish, but like isn't going to leave you feeling totally hungry again 30 minutes later. And I think Snickers recognized that like that was sort of an unfilled space. And so the whole campaign, You're Not You When You're Hungry, which follows with the line that everyone forgets about, which is Snickers satisfies, was meant to sort of open up this whole new competitive set in behaviors for Snickers, which is it's now a brand you might turn to when you are, in fact, a little bit hungry, but first and foremost, you want something delicious. And it still, after like 20 years, kind of sits alone there, while the like protein bars fight it out in the true hunger category and the like various candies duke it out on the other side and taste and nothing else. It still kind of has a little like patch of land that's just its own, which I think is really kind of interesting. Yeah.
I wouldn't think about that, but yeah, sure. When you put it that way, I truly believe in that. What do you think? What are the examples of where teeny behavior changes take us extra mile or just a little bit further? Brands and examples that do these for us.
So another brand I worked on is Frank's Red Hot, which is a hot sauce. It's America's best-selling hot sauce, I think, which is sort of incredible. And it has presided over, like, it's driven a very small behavior change that is like in aggregate over a long time, I think pretty fundamentally changed the way that like Americans consume hot sauce. So if we're to like flash forward to like, or flash back to like the past, and I'm going to generalize like hugely here, I think most Americans used to have a relationship with hot sauce that was like selective deployment for certain dishes and certain dishes only. So I want to make buffalo wings. I'm going to use hot sauce. I want to deliberately make something like more spicy that should be spicy. So like Mexican food is a good example. I might pull out like a hot sauce for that. But people were not doing the like Beyonce thing where that, like I have hot sauce in my bag, just carrying it around all the time. That was not a like predominant American behavior. And now a lot of Americans, millions of Americans, treat hot sauce the way they treat salt and pepper, aka it just sits on the table. Mm-hmm. It can be used for everything. It goes in soups. It goes on top of salads. It goes on literally everything. And Frank's for 20 years, and still its tagline has been, I put that shit on everything. Its whole entire brand is just about showing the myriad ways that you can use hot sauce. And in fact, if it finds a way to use hot sauce that Frank's is bad at, it will change its product. So for example, like Frank's noticed that even people who love hot sauce, they'll put it on like 100 different things, but they won't put it on sandwiches. Because of course, the like consistency of Frank's it's a liquid. It's like Tabasco. So it like you splash it out. We're going to splash your sandwich. Like, no. So they invented like Frank's thick sauce, which is sort of the consistency of like barbecue sauce and therefore much better for a sandwich. So they're like on this sort of mission to like behaviorally fundamentally change. But what that looks like if I'm a human being is just that now hot sauce sits at the center of my table permanently out the way that salt and pepper do. It's a simple change. Hot sauce used to live in the back of the fridge and I pulled it out once a week for whatever dish I was making. And now it sits out on the counter every time. But that small behavioral difference represents like billions of dollars because it's like the number of usage occasions explodes. And I found that like very interesting to like watch a company do that deliberately.
It sounds like episodes of Mad Men.
Yeah.
Thank you. Which I really, really did love. TV show, and I still watch it time to time.
I'm doing a rewatch of it a little bit. I think. Yeah.
I see bits and pieces on social media, and it's so well done. My God.
Oh, well done. Yeah.
Um,
I also want to dress like Megan, the Don Draper's second wife. I've like, I'm like trying to, yeah. Anyways.
you have so much to say, so much to say. So I really want to dig into your library. Time when making a brand feels distinctive was the thing that unlocked choice, especially in category where everything looks interchangeable. Give me an
Yeah.
example for that.
Okay. So I think I'll give you a couple examples from a category that I think does this really, really well, which is the beer category. Beer is much like chocolate bars, much like hot sauces. I think my favorite categories to work in are categories that have huge, just vast swaths of competitors, dozens, hundreds, because it just is like makes it so much harder and therefore more interesting. And beer is one of those categories. Beer's been around forever. There are hundreds of beers. And the sort of prototypical way of advertising beer is carefree, good weather, good times with friends, sports. So like Bud Light, Coors Light, like if you were to like go to ChatGPT and be like, make me a prototypical beer ad, you would get like buddies having fun, kicking back, no
Yeah.
worries, with a beer, and probably like a football is being thrown around or something. And so if that's the like sort of prototypical way of advertising beer, which is very effective, and that's what a lot of brands do, it also creates a room for brands to function as sort of an antidote to that, or to find like a different way in to be distinct. And so, for example, like Dos Equis used to do that very successfully. And just last week, Dos Equis had a campaign that HAVAS actually created called The Most Interesting Man in the World, where the line was like, I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I drink Dos Equis.
Oh
And
yeah.
which is crazy because Dos Equis prior to that was like a very undistinguished Mexican beer that like was not seen as sophisticated in the slightest. But this campaign managed to make it feel like this sort of premium, interesting,
Oh yeah.
nuanced voice. That campaign stopped in 2016, and last week it came back, which is really exciting and interesting. And then Stella Artois has done this really well as well with the whole, they have this sort of deliberately pretentious, borderline ridiculous positioning that's like, they serve the beer in a chalice and they talk about how it's 3 times filtered. They're borrowing language from like things like vodka and other spirits that talk
Mhm.
about like distillation and filtration and use all those quality cues. And so that's like another way at it. I used to work on Modelo for many, many years. And Modelo was, while I worked on it, it usurped it. Bud Light used to be the best selling beer in America. And then Modelo took over. And one thing that I think I learned working on that brand is that Modelo has a sister brand, Corona. Corona is owned by the same company that Modelo is. And Corona is exactly what you think a Mexican beer would be, right? It is like good times, friends, beach, lawn chairs, party, fiesta, whatever. Modelo is functionally the exact same product. I mean, not exactly, but practically speaking, it's a Mexican lager. Like it's the same thing. And yet, if you were to look at Modelo advertising, it's dark, it's moody, it's borderline angsty. It talks about tenacity and hard work and perseverance. And it basically positions the beer not as a relax and have a good time with your friends beer. It's the like commiserate after a long, hard day beer. It's the like everything went wrong, but we made it to the stoop at 10 p.m. Let's have a beer. Like some things are okay beer. And to me, I think the fact that one category where all these things are functionally largely equivalent to each other, that I'm able to say that like Dos Equis is the beer for when I want to seem more interesting, and Stella is the beer for when I want to feel fancy, and Modelo is the beer for when I've had a long day, and that those can all be completely different usage occasions. Like to me is a sort of testament to the power of like when the stuff is done well, how you can make those brands feel distinct from each other.
Very cool. Well, thank you.
Oh, cool.
I do love those stories very much so.
Thanks.
So we spoke about a couple of other brands that you work on, and one in particular was a brand that I thought it is less of a consumer brand. Well, you're talking about brand that you work hotel brand that really does something very, very different. That truly generally change how people behave and how they do things, right? And those are not just positionings, but they made people do things. So I would like to hear that story. I really love the story. That's my favorite.
This is Wyndham, I think. Wyndham has been a Havas client for about like a year and a half. Wyndham it's an interesting brand. It's a portfolio of brands. It's like 26 hotels, many of which people have heard of, but a lot of which they haven't. And I think that I think comparatively more like famous hotel chains, and you can think of like Marriott with its Bonvoy program, or like Hilton with its Honors program. And so Wyndham is operating in a sort of slightly different space, and it is very hungry to like make its mark and be ambitious, and also to like give people a reason to choose Wyndham, which is the real business problem that it faces, which is I have 26 brands in sort of some relationship with each other. And like, why would somebody choose a Wyndham hotel, a Wyndham Garden Inn over a Hilton Garden Inn or other garden? And so one of the insights that someone on my team came up with is probably inspired by their own life, is like, what happens over the holidays when you go to stay with family? And if you're close to your family, I think a lot of times you literally stay with your family. You stay in their bad basement spare bedroom, and they're like pull out couch, or you come and you stay in their house, and you slowly grow to hate them over the course of your like time with them. We're never doing this again. It's this sort of nightmare. And I think the insight that the person on my team had was actually the best way to stay close to somebody that you're related to is not to stay with them, it's to stay nearby.
Agreed.
I think insight coalesced really beautifully with something that Wyndham does uniquely well, which is that Wyndham, by virtue of being the largest hotel chain, is about 90% of Americans live within 10 minutes of a Wyndham property. So if you are looking to stay close, but not too close to your family, actually the best hotel chain to meet your needs is a Wyndham, because physically it's likely that there's one extremely close to wherever your family happens to be. So there was this sort of great moment of like a connection between what people really need in that moment, which is to be close but not too close, and what the hotel legitimately does better than anyone else, which is proximity and ubiquity. And so the combination of those two things led to what we call the Stay Close campaign, which was basically an encouragement to like, when you go home for the holidays, don't literally go to your parents' home.
I think it's really, really amazing that one brand can actually rely on change people behavior. I mean, just going to hotel, it's one thing, but find an entire reason to go to hotel. It has, in my mind, such a deep, profound meaning. I think that is exactly where brands start reaching out the level of indispensability. And the last thing I really want to talk to you or ask you about this idea, how expectation shapes experiences. Do you really believe in that? There's this thing that most of advertising brain people always talk about experiences. And just because customers are interested in that, right? Because experiences are selling and we are going after experiences. But what is really the truth, at least I'm trying to communicate, is that truly expectations create experiences.
I do think that the role that a brand plays in people's lives and like what they expect from it can totally impact how loyal they are to it, how they forgive it for its foibles, how they stick with it. I think, and this might have been an example that you used with me once upon a time, was Apple. I think you raised, and there is this sort of persistence of Apple that I think functions on a couple levels. So it's like I'll use myself as an example. I think I'm pretty typical of many, many people. I have an Apple phone and a computer, and half of the plugs in my life are Apple plugs. They're never the right Apple plugs, but they're, I have a million kinds, and my AirPods and whatever. My life is full of devices made by Apple. And so I think most people, when asked why it is that they stick with Apple, will give you a very rational answer about essentially switching costs, right? My whole life is with this. My Apple ID is everything. I'm like already signed up. My music comes that way. Like, to change would be so hard. That's, I think, the rational answer that most people give you, which is not an illegitimate answer. I just think it's only a partial answer. And, another part of that is identity, that Apple very successfully for a very long time sold a idea that Apple was for the artists and the renegades and the rebels and the people who like think a little differently. So even if I'm just a corporate automaton in my office tower riding the subway to and fro and doing my like whatever, I feel, imbued with a little bit of some rebellious spirit thanks to Apple. And I think that is sticky too. That concept that Apple is for a certain kind of person means that even if Samsung could figure out a way to make it so that I could switch from Apple to Samsung and it would like take 2 minutes and it would be effortless, I still wouldn't want to do it because I think of myself as an Apple person, not a Samsung person. And that is the product of lived experience and decades of work and a whole set of expectations that makes people attached to a brand. And I think also this is sort of now I've left the land of my work experience and I'm just talking about my like life now. But I was traveling for work last week and I was in France and I have been had occasion to think quite a bit about Dyson in my professional life for other reasons, like
Oh,
about
yeah.
like vacuum cleaner part of Dyson's business and the air purification part. But personally, I am like a big user of Dyson's various hair products, none of which work in France. I have tried. I have burned a Dyson to the ground, even with a voltage converter in Italy last summer. So I know that these products cannot come with me. And they're like riotously expensive. Like a hair dryer is $20. A Dyson Airwrap is $650. It's insane. I'm on my like third Airwrap. It functionally makes no sense. I was in France, no Airwrap, only a hotel room thing, about to make a very big presentation. And I now have the learned helplessness of someone who needs a Dyson to do my hair and can't do it without it. So I like hired someone to come to my house and like blow dry my hair for my hotel room, which is crazy, but did make me think that what Dyson has done is that they have sold me a nearly $700 hair dryer. But that's just 7 people visiting you in your hotel room to blow out your hair in a panic. So it's like Dyson has anchored my experience against the cost of a series of like blowouts versus against a $20 hair dryer. It's hard to justify a $600, $700 hair dryer when the competitor is $20. But when the thing that you're paying for is your sanity in another country, for example, it sort of hits a whole different set of like emotional markers and expectations and experiences for people. And I think that Dyson has very successfully rooted its product appeal, like in a way that allows it to justify a, frankly, ridiculous cost that I wait for it to come down every year. But yeah.
Very well. I think this was a really, really interesting conversation, Justine. Thank you so much. Anything that you would like to add? Anything new and exciting? Anything that you would like to add? Yeah.
Well, I had a question for you, which
Yeah.
is there a brand like in your life? Because I think a lot of what is interesting is like when people have irrational attachments to brands that cause them to, I don't know, spend more, do more, be more attached than they would otherwise. Is there a brand like that in like your life that has like more meaning than one might rationally predict?
Well, I'm European, and well, you just came from France. It's interesting that you're asking me this. Obviously, I have thoughts about that. There's a brand that I grew up in. I was a little boy. My parents, for whatever reason, bought a Citroën car, this
Mm.
French car, and that small two-cylinder vehicle that was barely moving. I think reaching 100 kilometers per hour was success, and everybody was celebrating. But there was something else to it. My parents would keep buying the same vehicle, and it was like incredible loyalty. But it wasn't necessarily just a. It's exactly what I believe that in this that vehicle became indispensable. They couldn't get rid of it because we were playing with that vehicle. You were able to do more than with any other car, right? You can assemble it. It was such an iconic piece of technology that wasn't necessarily functional. But what else was happening with that vehicle is that the number of friends that my parents had were driving the same vehicle. So there's a community that was built around that community. And still, there's a huge follow. After all these years, the vehicle is not produced anymore. It's a huge followership around the world of that same vehicle. So there's something about that has been beyond any other vehicles that exist. I believe Mini will have similar followership, but that is a brand
Yeah.
that I will highlight. So it's before Apple, before any of those fancy brands that we have today and Coca-Cola. And so that was that for me.
That was your original one. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being my guest.